For the next 4 solo episodes, I'm going to talk about the program, the curriculum that I use at Starfish Social Club. This is a curriculum that I created back in 2020. It came out of lockdown when everything I had been doing, I could no longer do anymore. The games, the books, the activities, none of that was helpful or even available anymore once we were not able to have our classes and our sessions in person. So I created this curriculum, and this is what I have used now since 2020. It's what I teach in all of our social groups. And most of the time when I'm working with kiddos one-on-one, it's also using this curriculum. There are 4 modules within the curriculum, and each module is 8 weeks long. So I'm going to do 1 episode for each module. The first module is called Identity. And this module is all about the concept of reputation. That may seem like a bit of a strange thing to talk about, but reputation is really at the center of everything when we're talking about social. And I find that my students come into my program at one of 3 levels when it comes to their awareness of the concept of reputation. Level 1 is students who really have no concept of reputation. They might not have even ever heard that word before. So they don't really know what a reputation is. They don't know where it comes from. They don't have a concept of what their reputation is. It's just not something they've ever really thought about. That's our level 1 kiddos. These students tend to engage in behaviors that give them reputations for maybe being a little bit awkward, a little bit out of place, a little bit weird, possibly even rude or annoying, but they just have no concept that this is even happening. Our next level are kiddos who are very aware of everybody else's reputation, but not their own. So they have other kids or other teenagers that they don't get along with, and they can tell you all the reasons why they might not like this person or get along with this person, but they don't have a concept of their own reputation. One of the ways that I test for this is I will sometimes ask students when I meet with them for the first time to tell me something that somebody else does that annoys them. It could be mom, it could be sister. If they have been talking about another person, usually it's from their school, I'll ask them about that person. So what are 3 things that this person does that really annoy you? Kids at level 2 can name those off really quickly, whereas kids at level 1 usually don't really have a concept of that. But kids at level 2 can very quickly tell you 3 things that another person does that annoys them. And so then I flip it and I say, okay, what are 3 things that you do that annoy that person? And for a level 2 kiddo, they usually do not have an answer to this. They don't know. They just lack awareness regarding the things that they do that bother other people or annoy other people or come across as selfish or rude. Their entire concept of reputation applies to everybody else, but not them. Level 3 students understand the concept of reputation. They understand other people's reputations, and they know what their reputation is. The challenge for these students is that they don't know how they have created that reputation and they don't know how to change it. The most common thing I hear from kids with this level of awareness is they will say things to me like, Steph, other kids tell me I'm annoying, but I don't know why. Or I know that, nobody wants to hang out with me. I don't know how to change that. I've even had a student who knew he asked a girl for her phone number and she told him that she didn't have a phone. And he knew that wasn't true, but he does not understand why somebody would say something like that to him. So this is a level 3 student, somebody who understands the concept of reputation and knows that they might not have the best reputation, but they don't understand why, and they don't know how to change it. This is actually a great level to be at, even though it can be really difficult for the student, because this is the highest level of self-awareness that comes before us being able to make some changes. So when kids are self-aware enough to recognize that they might not have the best reputation, we are ready to go from there. We are ready to move forward. So as much as it is difficult to see our kids and our students in that mental space, it means that they're ready to do some things differently. It means they're ready to learn some new skills or strategies. So that's why the program starts with the concept of reputation in our identity module. To me, it is the foundation of everything. It is the basis of everything else that comes up in my program. So the first week of the first module is just explaining the concept of reputation, what it is, where it comes from. Excuse me. A reputation comes from the things that we say and the things that we do, which is the same for everybody. Everybody in the world has a reputation. And in this first lesson, I share cartoon characters and movie characters with the students, and we talk about what is this character's reputation? What do we think about this character? Is this character brave? Is this character silly? Is this character intelligent? Are they evil? Right? What do we think about this character? And then we talk about why. What does this character say or do that gives them that reputation? And interestingly, for most of the characters, we come to be mostly in agreement about what their reputation is. It's not that common for people to have very different opinions on something like that. So then we talk about, what does this character say or do that gives them that reputation? And then toward the end of the lesson, I present characters whose reputation changes throughout the course of their movie or their TV show, which is really the character arc in most situations, right? That's really the story behind most books or movies or TV shows, is the character arc, the changes that the character goes through. And so through this, we learn that anybody can change their reputation. Now, it's always a choice. We don't ever have to change our reputation, especially not if we like our reputation. But even kiddos who don't have a negative reputation usually still aren't getting invited to birthday parties. They still don't have actual friends, even if other kids like them. So there's still something there that we can shift, that we can work on, that we can change if the student wants to. And that's the key to the whole program here at Starfish Social Club, is the kids wanting to do something different. Because if they don't want to do anything different, rock on. I mean, I'm not here to change anybody who does not want to be changed. I'm here to help my students see what could be different and teach them how it can be different if they're open to learning about it. So that's the first lesson. That's week 1, is what is a reputation? Where does it come from? How does it get formed? And then we end with the concept of we can all change our reputation if we choose to, just like all these characters that we know from books and movies and TV shows and comics. We also can change our reputation if we choose to. Week 2 is the concept of group behavior versus alone behavior. If our kiddos have a reputation for being annoying or rude, a lot of times it can be tied back to this, the concept of things that are appropriate or expected to do in a group, and things that make people feel uncomfortable or gross or weird if we do them in front of other people. A lot of our kids just don't really have a concept of this. And I'll share the 2 main things that we talk about during this week. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of things on this list, and every year, kids add to it. But 2 of the main things, the first one is picking anything. So picking your nose, picking your teeth, picking your earwax, picking your underwear out of your butt, picking your skin, picking your hair out, picking anything. It's a hygiene issue. It's just not something that people in general are comfortable witnessing from other people. So we talk about how alone behaviors are things that we do in the bathroom or things that we do when we're in our bedroom by ourselves. So pick food out of your teeth. You can excuse yourself and go to the bathroom if you feel like you have something in your teeth. If there's something on your skin that's bothering you, wait until you're by yourself and then you can check it out and pick it. Even, our underwear, excuse yourself and go to the bathroom and you can take care of that. And I even share with the kids that everybody picks their nose. Most people do it when they're by themselves. That's the difference. And I even tell the kids that if they're ever in the car, they can look around because there's a lot of adults that pick their nose while they're driving, if they're the only person in their vehicle. So it's just something that we tend to do when we're by ourselves or when we don't think other people are paying attention. And I will even share one of my big challenges is for as long as I can remember, I pick the skin on my bottom lip. I don't know if skin is the right word. It's a very subconscious thing that I do. It has nothing to do with me feeling nervous or anxious. It's 100% physical. If I can feel that it's getting dry, I will pick it and peel it. And sometimes I do it too much and I cause damage. I mean, I can create blisters. I can, my lip will start bleeding. And it's been, as long as I can remember, that's been a thing that I've done, and I can't seem to stop doing that. And I'm very conscientious about not doing it in front of other people. Sometimes if I can feel it when I'm talking to somebody, sometimes I'll excuse myself because I know that nobody wants to be having a conversation with me and I'm peeling my bottom lip. I understand that. So just helping kids understand that concept that you can pick anything you want to, just do it in private. Just do it when no one else is around or when no one else is paying attention. Not everybody understands that that's just something that other people find really unhygienic. Another great one is chewing fingernails. Most people are kind of disgusted when other people chew on their fingernails, but it's something that a lot of people do. It's also something that a lot of people do when they're feeling uncomfortable or anxious. The challenge with chewing your fingernails is you're putting your fingers in your mouth and then going about your business. And so even at Starfish Social Club, when we meet in person, if I see somebody chewing their fingernails, I'll ask them to go wash their hands because we're playing games, right? And so if somebody's chewing their fingernails and then moving their game piece or rolling the dice or drawing a card, they're now getting their germs from their mouth onto everything they're touching. So that's why people tend to be really uncomfortable when they witness other people chewing their fingernails, because you're transferring germs directly from your mouth to anything else that you're touching before you go and wash your hands. So that's another big one. And it's not just, I think sometimes we try to get kids to stop doing things by just telling them to stop or telling them that it's gross, or even with the fingernails, making it an aesthetic thing, that doesn't look good. But it's really, to me, it's always more helpful to just be honest about the social consequences of something like that. Picking your nose, right? The social consequences of picking your nose in front of other people is that you get a reputation for being gross, and other kids don't want to be around you. It's the same with chewing your fingernails. You get a reputation for spreading germs, and other kids don't want you to touch that. They don't want to be around that. So just being honest with kids about why that habit can be getting in the way of them being able to make friends with other kids, just little things like that. So that's the second week, is group versus alone behavior. Another thing we talk about that week is complaining. So that's all I'll say about that. The rest of it, your kiddos can learn in the lesson. We also talk about complaining that week. That's a big challenge for a lot of my students, is complaining. They just don't understand how it affects the people around them. During week 1, when we talk about reputation, all the students get to choose the reputation that they want for themselves. The main 3, and I have found this to be true universally, not even just with my students, but universally, the 3 primary reputations that I find that are important to people, in no particular order, are smart, friendly, and funny. Most people in the world want to be at least one of those, usually more than one or all of those. Funny is the only one that I find that not everybody cares about. Not everybody cares about being known as funny, but smart is probably the highest on the list in my experience. And then I used to use the word kind, but some discussions with some of the students has caused me to change that to friendly, because we've had conversations about how kind and friendly are not the same thing. So smart, friendly, and funny. So all the kids get to decide, what do you want your reputation to be? And sometimes they'll say things that are, different from that list. I've had kids say athletic. I've had kids say, helpful. So sometimes you'll get things that are different from that list, but most of the time there is some variation of those things. Even helpful is a variation of friendly. So week 3, we dive into a reputation for being smart. And week 3 are the things that we want to avoid saying or doing if we want a reputation for being smart. Because here's what's happening. Your kiddo or your student already knows what they want their reputation to be. And they are saying and doing things that they think gives them the reputation they want. But most of the time, they're actually sabotaging themselves. And here's my classic example. Very often, neurodivergent kiddos who want a reputation for being smart think that they get one by correcting other people. So that's my classic example of that. Your kiddo may be the one who calls out when the teacher makes a spelling mistake, Or if somebody says something that's not quite true, they'll be the first one to jump in and correct it. They aren't able to let things go if something might not be accurate. They are constantly pointing out when other people are saying or doing things that they perceive as wrong or incorrect. And in their mind, they are demonstrating how smart they are. You can see that connection, right? But to everybody else, that's not what lets other people know that they're smart. That actually gives them a reputation for being annoying. So that's one of the things that we talk about during this week, or things to avoid when we want a reputation for being smart. We talk about there are certain phrases that we want to avoid when we want a reputation for being smart. Things like saying, I know, actually. So there's just certain things that we want to avoid saying or doing because they don't give us a reputation for being smart. They give us a reputation for being annoying. Week 4 is also focused on a reputation for being smart. And in this week, I introduce what I call the reputation in moderation scale. The scale goes from 0 to 10. And the point of the scale is that on one end of the scale, the 0, 1, 2, these are things that we never or rarely do. Okay, never or rarely. But usually we're not doing them because we're too worried about what other people think about us. So if we go back to the example of correcting other people, if we are never correcting other people, even if they do something like calling us the wrong name, right? That's probably because we're a little too worried about what other people think about us. And on the other end of the scale, the 8, 9, 10 means we're doing these things often or always. Correcting other people, right? If we're doing it often or always. Usually once we get past a 7, we're getting a reputation for being annoying. So there's all kinds of things that we put on this scale. Correcting other people is a great example. We talk about how sometimes it's necessary. Like I said, if somebody calls you the wrong name, if you're out to eat and somebody brings you the wrong order, right? There are definitely times where it's appropriate and helpful and possibly even necessary to correct other people. Another example is sharing our opinion. If we're an 8 or a 9 or a 10 when it comes to sharing our opinion, that means we're sharing our opinion even when no one asked for it, or even when it may go against what everybody else in the group is talking about, or even when it might be offensive or hurt somebody's feelings. But on the other end, a 0, a 1, or a 2 are the kiddos who never share their opinion. They don't contribute to conversations. Other people don't really even know anything about them because they're not engaging, they're not speaking up, they're not self-advocating. Even if it's time to play a game, they're not saying what game they want to play. So you can see how either end of the scale can cause us some social challenges. They're just different depending on the end that we happen to go toward. So the goal for everything when we're talking about reputation and moderation is to be somewhere in the middle. And understanding that we are all very different people with very different personalities, there are some things where some of us are going to be more like a 3 and some of us are going to be more like a 7. And then the next topic we talk about, we could flip. Totally fine. We just want to think about being somewhere between a 3 and a 7. Week 5, the same concept with the reputation and moderation scale with being funny. So we do the same thing when it comes to being funny. The classic example of how kids can sabotage themselves when they're trying to create a reputation for being funny is that they will see or hear something that someone else says or does that other people laugh at, and they will copy it. Usually this is something another kid has done, and they see that other people think it's funny, and so then they try to do it. And of course, it's never as funny when someone else does it. Or they will repeat memes or jokes or try to show other people videos. It's just not as funny when people are experiencing it secondhand. So it's a classic example I see of kids sabotaging themselves when they're trying to have a reputation for being funny. But we use the same scale. We even talk about the concept of being silly. If we're never silly, even when everybody around us is being silly, like we're at a birthday party or we're, at a trampoline place and other contexts where people are normally just kind of silly, but we are not being silly, usually people are going to go find someone else to hang out with. But if we're always being silly, even when no one else is being silly, that's when we've crossed that invisible line into being annoying. So same concept with reputation for being funny, finding that middle ground. We even talk about things like how loudly we laugh, right? Are we trying to pretend like we're not laughing? Are we laughing so loudly that it actually makes everybody else stop laughing? I've seen that happen. So that's what we talk about in week 5, is how to be in moderation when it comes to creating a reputation for being funny. And then week 6, same thing, reputation for being friendly. And this one, I think sometimes it can be a little difficult to understand how somebody can sabotage a reputation for being friendly. Excuse me. And I'll tell you something that actually happened at Starfish Social Club, and I was able to use it to show all the kids this example. It happened in summer camp in 2023, so just the last summer camp that we had. And in the building that we were in, it's a 2-story building. And because we're in Texas in the summertime, sometimes it's too hot for us to walk to the playground that we go to every day. There's, about half the summer in 2023, we were under heat advisories. So on the days that happens, there was a shaded area with grass. It's pretty out of the way. And so we would just go hang out there, and we would take balls and rackets and footballs and all kinds of stuff. And we would just go play out there instead of walking to the playground. And so one day we're all hanging out in this little grassy area, and it's right outside the window of Starfish. And the person who's in the office above Starfish, I never met these people before. They opened their window and started throwing frisbees towards us, like out the window at us. And they hit one of the kids because he's just randomly chunking frisbees chucking, whatever the word is, out the window at us. And so it hit one of the kids. And so I looked up, and now I don't remember how the exchange went, but basically, he's trying to be friendly. He sees us out there playing, and he thought the kids might want some frisbees. But at no point did he ask me if I wanted him to throw frisbees out the window. And at no point did he ask the kids if they wanted frisbees. And so what ended up happening, the kid who got hit wasn't hurt. I was like, what is happening here? And then when none of the kids really wanted them, and so when we got done playing, now there's like 6 frisbees laying on the ground that weren't ours. We didn't want anything to do with them, but now we feel like we have an obligation to pick them up. So it's a really bizarre situation. And when we went back inside, I pointed out to the kids how that was a great example of somebody trying to be friendly, but actually it kind of had the opposite effect. Oh man, that was funny. Okay, so that's week 6. Another way kids can sabotage a reputation for being friendly is by over helping. This may be something that you see in our kids that have more anxiety, over helping. So helping even when nobody asked for it, helping even when it's not really wanted or needed. or helping, but actually making things worse. So that's another way that kids can sabotage a reputation for being friendly. Weeks 7 and 8 are all about the concept of feedback. And let me tell you why this is so important to me. Our kiddos, especially if they're in a traditional educational setting, most of the time they will get either no social feedback from their peers, meaning other kids ignore them, other kids kind of, walk away from them, kind of avoid them. So they're getting no social feedback, or they're getting negative social feedback. Kids are telling them they're annoying. Kids are saying, I don't want to play with you. Kids are saying you're gross. That's negative social feedback. Even at home, the same may be happening. Especially with siblings. Siblings usually try not to be confrontational. So they might give no social feedback. They might just ignore it and let it go. Or they might get to the point where it becomes confrontational. And now you have name calling and, being disrespectful. And of course it can go both ways. Absolutely. Because of this, our kiddos very, very rarely get helpful social feedback. So if all that's happening is, every time it's recess time, the other kids run away from you, or the other kids keep telling you that you're annoying, but you don't know why, how can you possibly create a different outcome for yourself? How can you possibly start to make friends and have conversations with kids when you don't know why the kids are running away from you, or you don't know why they're calling you annoying, or you don't know why everybody stops talking when you walk up to the group in the hallway? This is one of my biggest soapboxes, if you will, about social, is everybody in the world deserves to have helpful social feedback. And so lesson 7, week 7, I teach our students how to give each other helpful social feedback. And here's what makes it helpful. There's only 3 situations where we are allowed to give each other social feedback. We're not allowed to give somebody feedback because we think they're annoying. We're not allowed to give somebody feedback because we don't like them. Here's when we are allowed and expected to give somebody social feedback: when they're in danger of harming themselves. So when we're in person at Starfish Social Club, sometimes somebody's walking and not paying attention, and that would be a great time to give them some feedback. When they're in danger of harming someone else. One time we had an office space with wooden floors, and a kiddo ran in and slid on his knees across the floor and knocked somebody over. One time a kiddo was swinging his jacket around his head and was about to hit somebody with it. That's a great time to give helpful social feedback. So danger of harming themselves, danger of harming someone else, and the third one is that they're in danger of harming their reputation. So this is obviously the most common reason we give each other helpful social feedback at Starfish Social Club. And helpful means that we identify what the thing is that they're doing, and we can either ask them to make a different choice, like, can you please stop? Can you please move? Can you please stop saying that? Or we can let them know, like, hey, that's kind of annoying. That's bothering me. It's too close to me, whatever. That's how we give each other helpful social feedback. And the thing about it is, sometimes kids who are 16 are getting social feedback about things they've been doing their whole life that no one has ever pointed out to them. And so sometimes it happens very quickly that kids start to realize, oh, when I'm talking to somebody, they don't like it when I'm that close to them. Or even when, the reputation for being funny, nobody really thinks it's funny when I keep saying the same thing over and over. But the feedback most of the time is not coming from me. I'm not their peer. I'm their teacher. The feedback is coming from their peers, which is so much more powerful than when it comes from me. It's coming from the other kids, but we're all in this together. All the kids who are in my program are here because they choose to be and they want to be. And so when they get feedback from other kids, it is handled most of the time with grace, with dignity, with respect. Rarely does somebody get feedback and have an uncomfortable negative reaction to it. And that's week 8. Week 8 is I teach kids how to handle feedback because nobody likes to get feedback, right? It usually means we've done something we maybe could have done differently or shouldn't have done, or that somebody considers wrong. So week 8 is I teach all the kids how to receive feedback. And a big concept in week 8 is the concept of apologizing and over apologizing. In my opinion, over apologizing is a much bigger issue than kids who don't apologize, because over apologizing creates a lot of mental health challenges. It means that we think we are wrong even when we're not. It means we're apologizing for things even when we might not really mean it. And it usually just becomes a default. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And we say it without even being aware of it. Probably about half the kids that are in the program, for as long as I've been doing this, struggle with over apologizing. It's a sign of anxiety. It can both be a symptom of anxiety and a cause of anxiety. And a lot of the kids just really struggle with that. And so we do an activity during week 8 where usually I split the kids into groups, and each group will make a list of 5 things that would be expected to apologize for and 5 things that we wouldn't be expected to apologize for. And then they switch lists and they see if the other group can identify them accurately. And things that I will often put on the list because I see them recurring are apologizing for not knowing something, apologizing for apologizing, because once we have this lesson, some of the kids kind of spiral with it, apologizing for having a different opinion, apologizing for not wanting to do something that somebody else does. So there's lots of things that I'll point out just to make sure that the kids recognize, unless you're physically hurting somebody, or if you do something on accident, we need to clarify that it was an accident. So that's a big one for apologizing, is when we need to clarify that it was an accident. Something that has physically hurt somebody, emotionally hurt somebody. Other than that, just move on. Right? If somebody gives you feedback about, it's like, hey, you're a little too close to me, you can say, oh, okay, and you can move. You do not have to apologize for being too close to somebody. You can fix that. Right? You can make a different choice. So that is our 8 weeks. And I want to share with you my favorite strategy for giving kids helpful social feedback. And I want to preface this by saying, a lot of times when I share this strategy with parents and teachers who are neurotypical, meaning you aren't autistic, you don't have ADHD, you don't have a learning disability, but you are parenting children who do, or you are teaching children who do, this strategy comes across as a little bit harsh, maybe. I'm here to tell you, it is not at all. This is the way I talk to my students, because this is how we need people to talk to us. We need people to be direct without being rude. We need to be people to be black and white without being disrespectful. Also, this strategy teaches kids how to be more self-aware. So I love it. I've just kind of come up with it. You know, I've been doing this for 8 years now, through Starfish Social Club, and 20 years just in special education. So I've come up with this strategy just through being around the kids. And I've also started using it on Facebook with random people in random Facebook groups. So first I'm going to teach you the strategy, and then I'm going to share some screenshots that I have of when I've actually used this with people I do not know in Facebook groups, and the results that I've gotten from using this strategy. Because it's not just about kids. It's not just about autism or ADHD. The whole world would benefit if we could support each other this way. So here we go. This strategy has 3 parts. The first part is what I call notice. So whatever it is that's happening, let's say, let me think of an example that might be a little more universal. Let's say that you have asked your child to, or your teen to do something, and they have had a certain response. So maybe they have ignored you. Maybe they have said they'll do it later. Maybe they've argued that they don't want to do it, whatever the case may be. So think of your child or a student of yours, and I'm sure you already know kind of the go-to response. So the first thing we're going to do is notice. I noticed that when I ask you to unload the dishwasher, you fill in the blank. Here's what's really important about this step. We're not inserting opinions. We're not inserting judgments. We are noticing what happened. So what did they say, or what did they do? Not your opinion of it, not your judgment. So they weren't rude, because that's a judgment, right? But maybe that, you didn't respond, or you seemed bothered that I guess that's a judgment too. You didn't respond. You told me you would do it later, whatever the case may be. You went in your room and shut the door loudly, whatever the case may be. So just notice, your voice, very neutral. Just, oh, I noticed it. It's just like, oh, I noticed there's a leaf on the ground. It's just like that. You're just, I noticed that the cats, went to bed already. You're just noticing what is. The second step is wonder. I love the word wonder because it's very non-judgmental. Wonder. And here's the thing about the second step of wonder. The goal is not to get a response from your child. That is not the goal. The goal is to plant a seed in their brain and to possibly open a conversation with them. But if it does not lead to a conversation, it's totally okay. So, excuse me, back to our example. I noticed that when I asked you to unload the dishwasher, you didn't respond, for example. I wonder if maybe you didn't hear me. So you could say that. I wonder if maybe you just really don't want to empty the dishwasher tonight. I wonder if maybe you want more time to keep doing what you're doing before you empty the dishwasher. The wonder can be whatever, but what the goal is to validate what you think might be going on. So why do you think your kiddo responded this way? Okay, so validate what you think might be going on. Okay, so I noticed that when I asked you to unload the dishwasher, you didn't respond. I wonder if you would like more time before you empty the dishwasher. And then step 3 is using the word think. So you can use it as a question. What do you think? You can use it as a statement. I'd love to hear what you think. So just, anything like that. And I'll give you a different example of this. This may be more appropriate for younger kids. One thing with younger kids that's very typical is grabbing and taking things. So it may be, I noticed that you and your brother were playing with Legos, and you were taking the pieces that he wanted to use. Okay, so notice. I wonder if you wanted them and you just didn't really know how to ask. Okay, so wonder. I wonder if you wanted them and you just didn't really know how to ask. Or I wonder if it's hard for you when you guys want the same thing. And then what do you think you could do differently so that you guys can keep playing with Legos together? Or what do you think about that? Or what do you think might happen if you keep taking pieces from your brother? So you can take this wherever you want to. You can make it your own words and your own personality, however you want to. Okay, notice, wonder, think. This is exactly how I talk to the students, and it helps them become more self-aware. And the longer kids are with me in the program, I can start to leave off the ends of it and they will start to figure things out quicker. And I'll give you my favorite example, and then I'll share my Facebook examples with you. So my favorite example of this was last summer in our evening game time. There was a group of students in Starfish Social Club. Once kids join, they can stay for as long as they want to. So I had a group of students who've been in Starfish for years, probably 5 years, and they're older, high school / young adult students. And so there was a core group of them, probably 6, that they've all known each other for several years. They get along really well. And their go-to for game time is to sit on the floor and play Uno. And every 8 weeks, when the modules change, we get new kids coming in. Sometimes kids change their schedule, and so they're coming on a different day. It's just a little bit of a toss-up every time we start a new module every 8 weeks. And so when this one had started, a student had changed schedules. And so he wasn't new to Starfish, but he was new to this day. And so these kids. So week 1, they all the students they really enjoy having new students coming in. They're all very friendly toward each other, very welcoming. So week 1, they had introduced themselves and everything had gone really well. Week 2, this student was late coming in. And so by the time he came in, everybody else they're already sitting on the floor. They've already started the game. And so when he came in, they didn't notice him because they're already engaged, right? They're already involved in what they're doing. And so at one point, one of the students looked up and he said, "Oh, it's so-and-so." And so he recognized him and he, made a, "Oh, it's so-and-so." And then all the, students came around. I was like, "Oh, hey." And I could feel that he wanted to sit with them and play the game. But because he was so new to them, I could also feel that he wasn't sure if they would say yes, which is a really valid concern, right? Fear of rejection is real and significant. And so I could just feel that that's what was happening with this kiddo. So I went over and stood next to him and said, I know that if you ask them if you can join them, I know they will say yes. So do you want to try? He's like, "Okay." And so he walks over and he says, "Hey, can I join you guys?" And immediately they're like, "Oh yeah, sure." But nobody moved to give him a place to go. Because again, they're sitting on the floor. And so he kind of awkwardly looked at me, and then he just kind of dropped down to his knees, but he was outside of the group. And none of them really, they just didn't notice. And so I just jumped in and I said, "Hey guys, let me tell you what I just noticed." And I said, "When so-and-so came in, I noticed that R looked over and said, 'Oh, hey, Jay's here.' And, the rest of you guys were really friendly and you greeted him. And then, Jay asked if he could join the group, and, T and S immediately said yes. But then I noticed, and one of the students said, 'Oh my gosh.' And he moved. Just because I was walking them through what I noticed. I didn't even get to the point of saying that I noticed nobody moved over. The students were able to follow where I was going. And as soon as one of them figured out where I was going, he immediately put something in place to change it. And so he moved, the other kids figured out what was happening, and they all kind of shuffled around. And then he had a spot, he had a place to go. And so there was nothing on anybody's part that was intentionally leaving him out. There was nothing that was uninviting about any of that. They were actually really glad to see him and had no problem with him joining. They just didn't recognize that there wasn't a spot for him unless somebody made a spot. But I only got to step one. I just got to the notice step, and they took it from there because they are so used to us having these kinds of conversations. And so at no point did I say, hey guys, move over, because I don't want to steal that moment from them. I don't want to steal their learning opportunity by telling them what to do. I want to create a learning opportunity for them by noticing. And if they still don't pick up on it, then I'm going to wonder, right? I'm going to see if I can figure out what they might be thinking. And then if still nothing changes, then I might use a think. And still, if nothing changes, I'm just going to let that go, because my goal isn't behavior change now. My goal is to plant that seed. Even with the example of the kiddo taking a Lego from his brother, I can say, I noticed that you keep taking the pieces that your brother wants. I wonder if you are feeling uncomfortable that you guys want the same things. What do you think might happen if you keep taking the pieces that he wants? And then you know what I can do? I can walk away. I don't have to get an answer. I don't have to expect an answer, but I have planted that seed in his brain. And either the situation's going to happen again, and I'm going to say the exact same thing again, or it's not going to happen again because he has now caught that in his brain and he's been thinking about it. Okay, so this strategy does not expect or require a response. It does not expect or require change. We're just planting the seed and we're helping our kids become more socially aware. Okay, as promised, let me tell you the 2 times I've used this on Facebook. The first time I did this, I didn't use the same wording, just kind of the same concept. To be honest, both of these situations bothered me, and I wasn't in my rational mind to use the wording that I use with the students. The first one is in a business Facebook group that I'm in, where people can make offers, right? They can say, hey, here's what I'm doing, here's what I've got. And so there's a woman in the group who is a copywriter, which is someone who helps people put things into words, basically. And so she was pitching her offer for copywriting services, and she was providing lists of words you can use based off of what you're trying to evoke. Like, here's a set of words if you're trying to get this or this. And she said, I just encourage you not to use all the words on the list, because then you'll sound like you have copyright Tourette's. So I read this post in the Facebook group, and people using disabilities as points of humor is a trigger for me. It's something I really have a hard time with. There's not a lot of things that bother me, to be honest, but people using disabilities for humor, I'm not cool with that. Even, as someone who has ADHD, people joking about how everybody has ADHD, I'm not okay with that. It's very untrue. And I guarantee you, your life does not look like my life. We're all a little bit autistic. Just people using disabilities as humor just doesn't sit well with me. So I see this post and I know I need to say something, but I am not one of those people on Facebook who just goes off on strangers. That is, first of all you're doing when you go off on a stranger is you are reinforcing their belief. You're not changing anybody's mind by going off on them. You're actually causing them to double down on what they already think or how they already feel. You're not changing anybody's mind by being disrespectful. So my goal was to get my point across but do it in a respectful way, because that's how we change people's thoughts and ideas. So I didn't want to do it in the group. I didn't want to, call her out. So I sent her a message through Facebook, and I said, I started by complimenting her offer, like, oh, like, seems like a really great offer. And then I said, are you aware that you're using a legitimate neurological disorder as a joke in your post? Not everyone realizes that Tourette's disorder is a real disability, since it's joked about so often. So I just wanted to point that out so you can change your wording if you choose to do so. And then I put a heart emoji, because I find that's a really good way to let people know that you're saying something, out of love, out of caring. So I'll read it again. I said, are you aware that you're using a legitimate neurological disorder as a joke in your post? Not everyone realizes that Tourette's disorder is a real disability, since it's joked about so often. So I just wanted to point that out so you can change your wording if you choose to do so. Heart emoji. Her response was, hi, I did wonder about this. Thanks for the message. I will edit it. And then she put 3 X's. And then she responded later and said, and thank you for doing this so respectfully and kindly. And then she put an emoji that's a smiley face with the hearts around it. So thank you for doing this so respectfully and kindly. So I responded and I said, you are very welcome. Thank you for taking the feedback. Done. Now I have to say, when I first saw her post, I was really upset. And it took me a while to come up with a response that accomplished what I was trying to accomplish, because I was pretty bothered by that. But I pointed out to her what was going on and the potential social consequences of that. And I gave her the option to change it if she chose to do so. And not only did she change it, but she was really appreciative of the way that I handled it. And so that's why I say that screenshot, is because I just thought that was really cool. So then about a month later, in a different business group that I'm in, somebody was talking about how on his registration page for his program, he can see how many people go to the page, but that most of them are not registering. And so he made some comment about how, people are getting the yips when they get to his sales page. The yips is also a legitimate disability disorder. And so again, I see this and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, oh, okay. So this one, I actually did comment directly on the post. And so I just said, hey, so-and-so, just wanted you to be aware that you're using a legitimate medical condition as a joke in this post. I'm wondering if maybe you didn't realize that. So I intentionally use like aware and wonder, right? I'm wondering if maybe you didn't realize that. So I'll read it again. Hey, Dan, just wanted you to be aware that you are using a legitimate medical condition as a joke in this post. I'm wondering if maybe you didn't realize that. And so his response was, actually, I didn't know yips was a medical condition. I thought it was just something I did before I shanked a golf ball into the woods. I guess now I am aware. So he didn't change the post, which, that's not my goal. My goal is not to make people act differently. But just like he said, now he's aware. And I bet he won't do that again. And I also bet he won't use other conditions as a joke again either. Okay. So that's my goal, is to build people's awareness about the social consequences of the choices that they're making. And the yips thing, that one might not have been so obvious. Not everybody knows that term, and not everybody knows that it's actually a legitimate medical issue. But the Tourette's thing, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only person who saw that post and had a reaction to it. I'm pretty sure other people did too. I also know I'm the only person who responded to it. I'm the only person who stepped up and said, hey, not cool, right? So there's just 2 examples of times where I've actually used that on Facebook. Oh yeah, there's his post. At a bare minimum, it causes the last minute yips with every single person who goes to my page. So yeah. But I just thought that was I don't know these people. I have no idea who they are. But both of them I feel like took the feedback really well. Even though I'm a stranger and I'm pointing out something that they did that was a little socially awkward. So on that note, that is module 1. That is everything we cover in the first 8 weeks of the program. There are 3 different ways that you can access module 1, the identity module for your kiddo. The first one, the most popular one, is our live social groups. Definitely hands down the most popular option. I teach module 1 August through October. So if you're not listening to this when we're getting close to August, which most likely you aren't, that's the next time that I discreetly teach module 1. However, all the modules interact with each other all year round. So even if you register in October, in March, in whenever, they're all embedded within each other and they all play off of each other all year round. It's just not explicitly what we're working on the rest of the year. But you can still join the groups and your kiddo will still learn this no matter when they join. So we always have a wait list. So that's what you can do in the meantime, is join the wait list for our groups. Another option is I do work with students one-on-one. Usually this is kiddos who don't live in our time zones. So we operate under, US time zones. So typically it's students who don't live in US time zones. It could also be students who are older than 21, because what I teach, as you can tell from listening to this episode, is applicable to anybody. The groups just tend to be focused on kids who are 7 to 21, because I don't usually get enough students for groups when they're over 21. So that's another reason I work with students one-on-one sometimes, is because they're over 21. And so the group isn't the most appropriate for them. And then sometimes people just prefer one-on-one. So sometimes it's just a preference. The thing about one-on-one is we can work on whatever may be going on with your kiddo or you. It doesn't have to be a child. It can be anybody. So, the most recent one-on-one requests I've had, one is for a kiddo in the UK. So obviously that time zone doesn't match up with my time zone. So we're doing one-on-one sessions. One is for a kiddo who's 42. So obviously wouldn't be a good fit for the social groups, because those are, kids and teens and young adults. And then one is for a kiddo who's in the group program, but his mom just wanted him to have a little bit of extra personalized support because the group is a group. So he's doing both. He's doing group program and getting some extra one-on-one support. So those are just the 3 most recent requests for one-on-one support that I've had. The third way that your kiddo can have access to this program is the first module, the identity module, is available as a self-study option. So on the website, starfishsocialclub.org, if you go to resources, you'll see that module 1 is available as a self-study. So it's me teaching to the camera just like this, the exact same things that I teach in the social groups, just obviously without all of the conversation and interaction and everything that happens in the groups. But you as a parent or a teacher could get that and work with your child or student. And it's me teaching the lessons. You would just guide the conversations and reinforce it. There's activity sheets that go along with every lesson. So you have those to use as well. And also on the page that has the identity module as the standalone, as the do-it-yourself, you can actually go through the first lesson. It's all about reputation for free. Anybody can do that. So anybody who's listening or watching this, if you want to see what our first lesson is like, go to starfishsocialclub.org, go to the resources tab and find the place on there where it talks about our foundational module, the identity module. go to that page and you'll see, I think it's toward the bottom, that it gives you the option to do the first lesson for free. And that way you can see if you think that this is something that you would like your kiddo to learn more about. So 3 different ways that you can jump in on the identity module. Next time on my next solo episode, I will dive into module 2, which is all about awareness. So I'll see you again next week. I am really glad that you're here.